So today I'm going to talk about the dragon and the woman in Revelation 12. Now, I will go ahead and get started. All right. Now, many people have fallen prey to deceivers who deliberately misinterpret this particular chapter in order so that they will never understand, they will never know when this last part happens. And part of it has already happened. But Revelation 12 is a summary of the birth of Yahushua Messiah to Miriam, not Mary, Miriam, all the way to the very end, and the two witnesses. So, because everybody else starts with this and tries to point toward the sky, Jupiter, I don't know, Jupiter, Venus, whatever. They want to point to that. There were so many YouTube videos trying to prove the time is the end based upon what's up in the sky. This is a vision that Yohanan saw, not a vision that everybody else saw. Let's make this one thing perfectly clear. The whole book of Revelation is not what you and I see. It's what Yohanan saw in his vision. So what I want to do is go over this last part first to get context, because this last part provides context. It narrows the scope down where you cannot escape truth. Verse 13, and when the dragon saw that he was cast into the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. So then, who was the woman who brought forth the man-child? Well, in this case, it's the 12, or it's Israel. More specifically, the Jews, but Israel. Because you have to understand, even the lost Israelites were forced to work out in the fields of the Romans. They were the peasant class, the hated class, the slave class in Europe, and forced to feed the swine. Okay, as is written when you look at the story of the prodigal son. In this particular instance, verse 13 went on for around 2,000 years. This is what people don't seem to understand. The persecution of the woman began soon after Yehoshua rose up. Who was the dragon then? The dragon is the Roman government. Okay? This went on, this began when the dragon saw that he was cast into earth, he persecuted the woman. This began in 66, 67 CE. Verse 13 did. Now, verse 14, has this happened yet? And to the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time, times and half a time from the face of the serpent. Well, it happened partly. Only partly. Because all of the children of Israel have to be gathered together. All of them. when that happens, because there's only a fraction, that job is not done yet. So this job has started, but it's not finished. The times and a half a time, judgment against the Gentiles has not started yet. And the serpent, in retaliation to this, cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. They surround the place and attack. And an earthquake strikes, just like it is written in Ezekiel 38. And many men of war are devoured by the earth and the fowls of the air. Then it says in verse 17, the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of Jehovah and have the testimony of Yehoshua Messiah. Who are these? Who is this remnant? The two witnesses. The two witnesses. Let me show you real quick. Revelation 11, verse 3. And I will give power unto my two witnesses, and they shall prophesy how long? 3.5 years. This is the very 3.5 years that's written about in Revelation in the next chapter, Revelation 11. 1,203 score days clothed in sackcloth. These are the two olive trees and the two candlesticks standing before Jehovah before the Elohim of the earth. If any man will hurt them, fire proceeds out of their mouth and devours their enemies. And if any man will hurt them, he must be in this manner be killed. They have the power to shut heaven, to shut the sky, so that it does not rain in the days of their prophecy. How long is that? 1,203 score days. So as soon as the two witnesses begin their prophecy, the very first thing that happens is there is no more rain. Period. And they have the powers over the waters to turn them to blood, to smite the earth with all plagues as often as they will. And when they have finished their testimony, the beast that ascends out of the Abyssos, which is the Mediterranean Sea, not the bottomless pit, shall make war against them, and shall overcome them and kill them. So we see this right here, shall make war against them. Let's go back to Revelation 12. And went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of Jehovah and have the testimony of Yehoshua Messiah. The two witnesses, folks. Okay, so now we have a proper timeline here. So once the ascension by the Son of Man occurs, ascension to the throne of Jehovah, the dragon has to be cast down because there ain't room for the two of them. First thing he does, he persecutes the Jews, which represent Israel. But not only does he persecute the Jews, he persecutes all Israel. Many of Israel don't even know that they are Israel, and they were also among the persecuted. For 2,000 plus years, or very close to 2,000 years. And then to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly. How will she fly? Isaiah 60 and verse 8 says exactly how she's going to fly. on flying ships, airliners. Airliners is the #1 mode of transportation around the world today from continent to continent. Not sea ships, airships. And I would like to point out, folks, that you might want to go ahead and get a passport if you're like me, if you believe that when the call is made, when the clock strikes midnight, and the cry is made, the bridegroom comes, go you out to meet him, that you will already have a passport ready to go. Costs a little bit of money. And if your passport has expired, I strongly recommend that you update it. Please do this. So they're going to attack them, the Jews, all Israel, when they return, because the serpent is going to be angry that they have taken the land, that Messiah has taken the land that belongs to his kingdom, the kingdom of David. They're going to be angry and they're going to try to stop it. They're going to send their armies out there to stop it. But their armies are going to be wasted. And then they're going to come after the 2 witnesses and kill them. And when they kill the 2 witnesses, folks, you have to understand this. Once they kill the 2 witnesses, final judgment upon the Gentiles will take place. Why? Because 2 witnesses represent the following: the prophets, the apostles, the Jews, which are the saints, and all who were killed on the face of the earth. Okay? There are several examples of this here. One that I'm going to use is Revelation 18, verse 24. And in her was found the blood of the prophets and of the saints and all that were slain upon the earth. So this leaves out nobody. Okay? The 3 victims of the 3 cities. You say 3 cities? What do you mean 3 cities? I'll get to that in a minute. And in her was found the blood of the prophets, because they killed the 2 witnesses, you see, and of the Jews, the holy people, the Kodesh, and of all that were slain upon the earth. This leaves out nobody. Everyone who was killed is factored in the sentence. So the blame is to be upon that great city, Babylon. All right. Now, John had to be careful. So instead of using the name Rome, he used Babylon. And if you read scripture, you'll see that the city had 7 hills, and both Constantinople and Rome have the 7 hills that are mentioned. Okay. Verse 19, and the great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell, and the great Babylon came into remembrance. So this is all in one sentence. So, and we have singular, but we have divided into 3. And then we have plural. And as the cities of the nations fell, this is during the time of remembrance of great Babylon, right? Now, so let's look at this with Strong's Concordance one time. I've gone over this before. Great city. Jerusalem was never called the great city, but Rome has been called the great city. Constantinople has been called the great city, but what is the other one? Now, I've struggled over this for a while, but I've finally gotten a grasp of it. It says divided. That's not what it's, no. Wrong. Came into being, to happen, to become. So the great city became 3 portions. Not divided, became. And the cities of the nations fell. Okay, and that the nations will be the Gentiles. Okay. So in order to find what these 3, the great city became 3 portions is, let's look at something here. Third Rome. Third Rome. Third Rome is the hypothetical successor to the legacy of ancient Rome, the first Rome. Okay, so we know that Rome number 1, or Babylon number 1, is the ancient Rome. Second Rome usually refers to Constantinople. Okay, and remember, the Crusaders, the 10 kings, burn Constantinople with fire, fulfilling scripture. All right? Now, it was the capital of the Byzantine Empire, unofficially called New Rome. Okay? Now, Russian claims, successor to Byzantium, because of how the Crusaders sacked Constantinople, it allowed the Muslims to come in, the Turks to come in and take over. And the Byzantines were forced to flee northward. Known as a theological and political concept, Moscow is the third Rome. It was formulated in the 15th, 16th centuries in the Grand Duchy of Moscow. The concept there could be traced 3 interrelated and impenetrable fields of ideas. A, theology that is linked with justification of necessity and inevitability and unity of the Eastern Orthodox Church. B, social politics are derived out of the feeling in the East, feeling of unity in East Slavic territories being historically tied with Christian Orthodox faith and Slavic culture. C, state doctrine according to which the Moscow Prince should act as supreme sovereign and legislator of Christian Orthodox nations and become a defender of Christian Orthodox Church Herewith, the church should facilitate the sovereign execution of his functions, supposedly determined by God, the autocratic administration. After the fall of Tarnovo to the Ottoman Turks in 1393, a number of Bulgarian clergymen sought shelter in the Russian lands and transferred the idea of the Third Rome there, which eventually resurfaced in Tver under the reign of Boris of Tver, when the monk Forma Thomas of Tver had written the eulogy of the pious Grand Prince Boris Alexandrovich in 1453. But basically, let's see, within decades after the capture of Constantinople by Mehmet II of the Ottoman Empire on May 29th, 1453, some Eastern Orthodox people were nominating Moscow as the Third Rome or the New Rome. And there you have it, folks. Your 3 Babylons. 3 Romes. Your third Rome is there in Moscow. That's the reason why it says, and the cities of the nations fell. It's no longer singular. But it won't be just the 3 either. It will be all of them. But you can see where the influence comes from. Okay? First Rome, second Rome, third Rome. All have one thing in common. They all hate Israel. They all hate Israel's Messiah. They replaced Israel's Messiah with a false one, a counterfeit one that the Jews could never accept and would never accept. As was reported on Amazon Prime and Sputnik News just the other day. And yet, Christians will keep following after their false preachers, their false prophets, and their arrogance of hatred against Israel. Supersessionism. Supersessionism, and I know it has been defined supersessionism has now been defined in such a way where it no longer means it no longer has meaning. The real supersessionism, the crime that Christianity today and the Christianity of old, beginning and even before Constantinople, is replacement of the church as Israel, replacement of Israel, I should say, and replacing it with the church. That's the crime number 1. Crime number 2 is replacing Jehovah, the Elohim of Israel, with their own counterfeit gods, and then replacing Israel's Messiah with their own counterfeit that they gave several names over the course of years. And now it's all agreed that they call him Jesus or Jesus, which none of those names represents anything concerning Israel. And then, of course, replacement of Shabbat with Sunday in honor of Apollyon, the sun god. Replacement theology is a curse. It is a curse that blinds all Christians today. They will never see Yehoshua Messiah come until it's too late. They will never realize what's going on until it's too late, because of the arrogance, the hatred that they have for the holy people. And they will say, no, I don't hate them. Yes, you do. You do, because you celebrate Sunday as a day of rest, and you do it as an arrogant gesture against Jehovah, the Elohim of Israel. Even after Yehoshua, the real Messiah, removed the burden that was placed on the Sabbath, on Shabbat, removed that, especially for the Gentiles' sakes. The Gentiles should have been thankful. But what did the Gentiles do? The Gentiles went and thumbed their nose in the eye, in the face of Jehovah, the Elohim of Israel, and thumbed their nose at Yehoshua Messiah, who made it easier for them, and instead changed the day to Sunday to honor their false god. The Gentiles were only given 4 things. I think it's in the book of Acts. Yes, Acts 15. They were only given 4 things, folks. Let's see here. Verse 28, for it seemed good to the Holy Spirit and to us to lay upon you no greater burden than these necessary things. The Sabbath was not a part of this burden upon the Gentiles. It wasn't. That you abstain from meats offered to idols. That's number 1, which means no idolatry is allowed. No bowing down to graven images is allowed. And what have the Gentiles done? Graven images all over the place and sacrificing to these idols all over the place. Whether it's the Christmas goose or the Christmas swine. And from the eating of blood and bloodshed. Well, eating of blood and bloodshed has permeated throughout Roman Europe continually. So they violated number 1, they violated number 2, and from things strangled or strangled meats, and obviously violated number 3, and from fornication. From which, if you keep yourselves, you shall do well. Fare you well. They were only given 4 things. They were not to commit murder. They were not to commit idolatry or eat anything offered to idols, including halal. And of course, now Europe is now accepting halal meats all over the place as well. They were not supposed to eat blood, nor to be shedding of blood, committing murder. It is written that the law contains, the Torah contains 1 commandment. If you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And if you love your neighbor as yourself, you're not going to be shedding blood, period. And from things strangled and from fornication. These 4 things they were given, that was it. The abstaining from work on the Sabbath was not among them. They were given a lot of freedom. It was much easier for the Gentiles. than it was for the Jews. They violated all four tenets, all four of them. So going back to this particular passage, once you understand verse 13 through 17, then you will understand all of this. Now we'll go over the other parts. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven. This was a vision of John that came to John. A woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. This crown of 12 stars are the tribes of Israel. Now, I know that Europe, they claim they have the crown of 12 stars. Well, Europe is inhabited by the people who claim that they are Israelites, and they are not, but they do lie, and they worship at the synagogue of Zeus or Jesus, Satan. How do I know this? Because they have continually been the enemies of Israel. And she, being with child, travailed in birth. And this right here is Miriam, not Mary, but Miriam, who represented Israel, and in pain to be delivered. And appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Well, the 10 horns, you know who they are. They are the European kings, and the 7 heads began with Emperor Augustus and ended with, well, I have that list here somewhere. Vespasian, he was 8th of the 7. Okay. And his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered. Now, this is represented by Herod, who answered to the emperor in Rome. So he was a deputy of the emperor in Rome, and thereby he represented the dragon that stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. He ordered all of the boys to be killed up until 2 years old. And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, as is written in the prophets. And her child, a grown man, was caught up unto Jehovah and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared of Jehovah, that they should feed her 1,260 days. Who's going to feed her there? The angels are going to do it. You saw everyone, if you look in YouTube, you will see the sign of the angels in 1973 standing up, fulfilling Daniel 12 and verse 1, where Michael stands up for Daniel's people. And that marks the next conflagration in Israel is going to be the worst. It's going to trigger the worst conflagration that the world has ever seen and never will see again, according to what it's written in Daniel 12, verse 1. And in those days, all Israel will be delivered, will be saved. Daniel 12. And the angels are going to feed her there for 1,260 days. Now, does the war in heaven happen next? No. Now, there's a lot of translations make you believe that. But this is like this portion right here. This is a summary. And there was a war in heaven. When did that take place? When Messiah ascended. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and dragon fought against the with his angels. And he prevailed not, neither was any place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called Devil and Satan, which deceives the whole world. And he was cast into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now has come salvation and strength, and the kingdom of our Elohim, and the power of his Messiah. Come to where? It came to heaven. The power of the Messiah came to heaven, came to the sky, for the accuser of the brethren is cast down. So Messiah ascends, the accuser of the brethren goes down at the same time, down to earth. When did that happen? When Messiah ascended, which accused them before Jehovah our Elohim day and night, and they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb. When the Lamb returns, when they see him, when they see the one they pierced, they're going to see him and weep over him. At that point in time, Israel will overcome the serpent by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto death. Now, there is a peculiar statement written. Let me find it here. It is in Matthew. Let me see here. Okay. Matthew 17, I believe it is. Verse 23. Is it right here? 20 or 33. This is the day when the Son of Man is revealed. You read right here. The first Son of Man must suffer many things in verse 25 and be rejected of this generation. And he was. Exactly to fulfill Daniel 9. And it was as it was in the day of Noah, so shall it be days in the Son of Man. They did eat, they drank, they married wives, and were given in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark, and didn't see it coming. And the flood came and destroyed them all. Likewise, it was in the days of Lot. They did eat, they drank, they bought, and they sold, they planted, they built. But at the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even as shall it be in the days of the Son of Man is revealed. All right? In the day that the Son of Man is revealed, what do you do? In that day, he which shall be on the housetop and his stuff in the house, let him not come and take it away. You go. When the day that the Son of Man is revealed, and the whole world is going to see it, that's when you make your move. That's when you go. You're not going to be raptured. You have got to act. You've got to move your legs. And he that is in the field, let him not likewise return back. To return back what? To his house. Go. Remember Lot's wife. Whosoever shall seek to save his life shall lose it. And whosoever shall lose his life, what is this talking about? Shall preserve it. I'll tell you what that's talking about. It is in Isaiah 42. Because these people are going to be faced with immense pressure. From the elements. All right. I think it's in 42. All right, let me try this. (43), next chapter. But thus saith Jehovah, that created you, O Jacob, he that formed you, O Israel. Now you notice that in the previous chapter, he's talking about Messiah. Fear not, for I have redeemed you. How did he redeem them? Verse 42, look, my servant, whom I uphold, my elect, in whom my soul delights, I put my spirit on, and he shall bring forth judgment to the Gentiles. That's through whom. So let's go back and look at this again. But thus says Jehovah, that created you, O Jacob, and he that has formed you, O Israel. Fear not, for I have redeemed you. How? Because he's judged the Gentiles. I have called you by my name, by your name, and you are mine. When you pass through the water, I will be with you. And through the rivers, and they shall not overflow you. And when you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, neither shall the flame kindle upon you. So let's go back to Revelation 12 then. Is it Revelation? No, Luke 17. Okay. So in that day, in that time, it says right here, whosoever shall seek to save his life shall lose it, and whosoever shall lose his life shall preserve it. So it's talking about this scenario in Isaiah 43. There's going to be fire all over the place, flooding. And he says, fear not, Israel. Fear not, because he is with you. When you walk through the water, I will be with you. And through the rivers, and they shall not overflow you. Just like the water didn't overflow Noah, you see. And when you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. If you run from the fire, if you run away and try to hide yourself, try to save your life, it says you will lose it. So you cannot let, at that particular point in time, you cannot let anything stand in the way of you heading to Mount Zion. Use whatever means of transportation necessary to do so. Even if you have to walk through fire to do it. He says he will be with you, Israel. Okay. He says, I will say to the north, give them up, hand them over, and to the south, keep not back, bring my sons from afar and my daughters from the ends of the earth. Even everyone who is called by my name, all Israel. For I have created him for glory, and I have formed him, yes, and I have made him. Bring forth those blind people that have eyes, and the deaf that have ears. And then let all the goyim be gathered together, and let the people be assembled. Who among them can declare this and show us the former things? Let them bring forth their own witnesses, that they may be justified. Or let them hear and say that it is the truth. Okay. Now, I know there are some people misinterpret what I say deliberately and say, you're saying that no Gentiles are going to be saved. That's absolutely false. I never said that. I never even implied that. These false accusations of that come from the fact that I'm telling you that the scripture says that all Israel is going to be saved. The Gentiles, in contrast, do not believe any of Israel are going to be saved, but only the Gentiles. Because they have that notion stuck in their heads, every time I mention scriptures that said all Israel will be saved, as is written in Romans 11, verse 26, they think that that means that no Gentile is going to be saved. Well, that's Not my fault. Let me explain something here. So, the city of Jericho is a representation of Babylon, is it not? When the seventh trumpet was sound, all the walls came tumbling down. It's a symbol of Babylon. Who among the Gentiles was saved? Was it the most pious of them all? No. It was the town harlot. Yep. It was the town harlot that was saved. But not only her, every single one of her relatives. She gathered them all in one house. And what was the reason? Because she helped the Israelites. My point is, salvation will go to, even to the town harlot, if she helped the Jews. How awesome is that? How merciful is that? The town harlot. So, recapping, I hope that I have provided some insight into this particular chapter. Once again, these right here, this last particular verse, the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of Jehovah and have the testimony of Yehoshua Messiah. Those are the two witnesses. How do I know this? Well, you find out in the I think it's in the previous chapter. Yeah. See? Right there. They went to make war with the two witnesses. This is really not that hard to understand. But as soon as you let your preachers fill your head with their nonsense, you will be blinded. You'll never see it. So, apparently, how do I say this? The event of the nations surrounding Israel will be as a result of a trumpet being blown and all Israel gathered into the Holy Land. And the plagues for a time and times and half a time, 1,260 days, 3.5 years, is going to commence at the mouth of the two witnesses, which the dragon will make war with and kill. Anyway, like I said, I hope I've been helpful in this matter. I will try to continue to do these videos, and we need to really pay close attention to the elections in Israel, because according to certain sources in Israel, that Iran, Hezbollah are planning on wreaking havoc in the Middle East and coinciding with the elections. And recently, a couple of days ago, Russia has announced that they stand with Hezbollah and with Iran, and you know where that's headed.